Welcome to In the Notsam Studio, our conversation series here on the Notsam YouTube channel. If you haven't already, hit like on this video if you actually like the video. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you get alerted every time a new video gets uploaded to the channel. And if there is somebody that you want to see in the Notsam Studio, feel free to leave a comment down below. My guest today is Ben Kissel. I met Ben years ago when he was a comedy writer, and not long after that, he and a couple of friends launched a podcast called The Last Podcast on the Left. Today, it's one of the most successful podcasts of all time. With over 1 million subscribers and astronomical download numbers, The Last Podcast on the Left has launched the last book on the left, the last stream on the left, the last podcast network, all due to a love of everything horror and serial killers. I talked to Ben about being a horror fan.
So horror movies and our love with horror movies, specifically Marcus Henry's and I's, obviously, that's what catapulted all of this.
His pro wrestling fandom.
What are you doing in there? Get out of there.
And a lot more. Look, Ben has turned the things he loves into what he does. And that's why today Ben Kissel is in the Notsam Studio. So let's welcome somebody that when I met, he was just a lowly comedy writer, and now he's part of the most successful, I guess, true crime / comedy podcast in the world. Last Podcast on the Left, as well as a lot of other stuff. Ben Kissel, what's going on, man?
Thanks for having me, Sam. Yeah, bro, we met. I was writing for the show Red Eye. It aired at 3 o'clock in the morning, which is when everything that I say should be said.
Yeah.
And you were a fantastic guest. And I think we actually got to perform a few times together on camera also. And the juxtaposition between the gargantuan that is me and the normal size that is you was always pretty funny, I remember.
Yeah. I thought it was great. I also like having you here because this is the first time I think that I've had somebody on that people won't be being like, man, Sam, you're turning in to Mick Foley. Because they'll go,
Yes.
That's what it could have been. Especially, I don't even have the right color flannel on. You're actually wearing the right color flannel.
All I need is a Santa Claus hat, the Christmas spirit, and a few more broken limbs. And I think I am Mick Foley. But thankfully, I don't have any of those things.
Did you ever, I mean, speaking of you being a giant, did you ever want to be an athlete? I feel like, you hear these stories from people who end up in comedy and performing and doing podcasts and stuff like that. And they had to develop personalities because they didn't have any other assets. Like in high school, they couldn't join a sports team. They couldn't do anything. So they had to learn how to talk.
I had like the inverse of that where, man, these dudes looked at me like I was a prized pig. They were so horny to get me in a football on a football field or on the basketball court. They were like salivating. I felt as if I understand mildly what it's like to be preyed on upon Hollywood pedophiles. Only in this case, it was Wisconsin coaches who were so desperate for any kind of win so that they might be able to get one more Whopper at Burger King. So I actually had a love-hate relationship with sports, hated playing football, played my senior year, went to the state championship game. And that was a good experience. My basketball coach was just a frickin' guy. Can I say bitch? He was a bitch.
You can say that.
And so I decided to actually wrestle. And I wrestled in high school for 3 years. I got third in state my final year. It was like division Catholic. It wasn't even division 3. It was literally like division religious, like people who are not athletic division. So, but it was cool. And I always wanted to do entertainment. I did backyard wrestling with my friends throughout high school. We were huge wrestling fans. I trained to be a pro wrestler for about 6 months before I realized I'm not tough enough. The name of the show, Tough Enough? The answer is no. So I had some experience with the physical world of entertainment, and I quickly decided maybe cerebral is the way to go. Sitting down, you can make money doing that. That's my forte.
Yeah, it's like people want to, you have to work really hard to make it an entertainment, but it's like, yeah, but it's not like actually working really hard. Like you don't. You have to do it
kind of a lot, but it's not.
Bro, I get winded watching Triple H's Instagrams when he works out at midnight. I look at The Rock, and this is why I love The Rock forever, because people will be like, Rock, Dwayne, what do you do to stay in shape? And he literally is like, I'm not going to tell you because you shouldn't do it. I'm a superhuman. You're a plebe. Don't even think about doing what I do. You're going to blow your anus out.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but you never were like, look at this frame that I have, right? Somebody like me, I don't.
You know, for me, again, Sam, I'm jealous of you. You have an actor's body. By actor standards, you're 7 foot tall, gorgeous.
I see.
All these actors are. Did you ever see Clint Eastwood in real life, or my man Kurt Russell? My boy is this big. They are tiny. I always wanted to be on the big screen, but I didn't realize to get there, you got to be small.
Oh, that's a great call because I'm so like in the wrestling world that like I go and I do the NXT pre-show. And they put me next to two guys that are like 6'6" apiece, and I look like I'm not a person. I look like I'm a different species of human being. But by Hollywood standards, I'd be colossal.
Dude, you're huge. Yeah, you would be cast as every single mega villain because Tom Cruise is the size of. He is the size of Ally McBeal if Ally McBeal stopped eating, which is a reference to a 90s television show.
Hey, man.
To date myself a little bit.
Look.
But no, it really is. It is funny, man. Everyone always has, the grass is always greener. But I fell in love with Saturday Night Live. When I was very young, 11 years old, Sandler, Farley, Spade, Norm. I mean, the greatest cast of all time. That was my big goal in life, was to make it to New York and become an entertainer. So my size actually kind of was a hindrance. But of course, as I get older, I realize it's nice to be able to walk down the streets and not fear for my life or my butthole.
Right. And you see, like that, I do. That's my day to day. Like that's just how I exist. So you want to get at entertainment. When the podcast started becoming super successful and you realize like, oh, this thing that I was just doing, this has become what I do. Like I don't need to get on another show because there's a million people that are listening to me joke around about this serial killer right now. Is that weird for you to wrap your head around the fact that you don't need to look for the acceptance of somebody else that's casting or hiring or something like that? Because
ooh, brother, there is nothing more important than independence. I have to say, being beholden to the powers that be in the entertainment industry is a fate worse than death. They are horrible. They have no soul. They don't care about you one bit. So being independent has been a complete and utter miracle. And of course, we're very thankful for our fans, because without them, we wouldn't exist. We started with a Patreon 4.5 years ago. And before that, we had just been doing the show for free for 6 years.
Wow.
And so finally we said, oh my God, do you think we could get some money for this? And they were incredible. And because of that, we were able to start getting our network together as a whole. So I do Abling and Stop At, the political show. Kind of Fun is all about wrestling and sports. Roundtable at Gentlemen's, our OG, last podcast. And then I also do, I think I have another show, the LPN show. And so I was doing 3 out of those 5 shows for free for 11 years. And then we just started making money 4.5 years ago. We were turned down by Sirius Radio. Like I remember we went into Sirius Radio to pitch, and the dude was like, this is incredible. He looked at me and he, again, like I had the biggest bosoms in the room. I did. But imagine if that was a good thing. He was like, your voice is incredible and all this. He was like, again, really getting amped up about us. We didn't get the deal, but thank God. And then we were so excited after the meeting, we did a pilot that was freaking badass. It was awesome. They're like, that was the best we've ever heard in an old-timey radio voice. That's what they talk over there.
Yeah, that's all old-timey radio people. That's serious.
They're old-time radio folks, right? So we were like, we're going to do this. This is awesome. The contract would have been for $30,000.
Right.
Thank God we didn't get it. So in the entertainment industry, every single rejection that we've had, in hindsight, I'm like, thank God we're not locked in with Peacock right now.
That's also what podcasting has done, though. Like there would have been a time where you'd be like, somebody's going to pay us $30,000 to do this show, And then you're
Bro,
like,
that's how we celebrated. We celebrated by, I mean, I think I had Bud Light, and I went as far as taking Jameson shots, not even rail whiskey that night.
right. And then you like start doing it independently and you're like, wait. How much money do these shows make? So what happens to everything that's not the 30 grand? Who gets that?
Dude,
how does that work?
I know, man. Well, when it comes to radio in general, of course, I mean, I don't have to tell you the Telecommunications Act, everything that happened in the 90s, destroying radio, the whole institution crumbled beneath our feet. And I think we're roughly the same age. I'm 39. But I remember growing up with AM radio, FM radio, legitimate radio, where DJs had options and choices and they could actually cater to an audience. And all of that was gone. So thank God that technology with the podcast, came about. And, Marcus Parks and I, who started Last Podcast on the Left, obviously quickly to be joined by Henry, and all three of us own the Last Podcast Network now. This all stems from just the love of radio and not having any place to perform said radio. It would be like if basketball courts just became sand overnight. And then everyone's like, what the hell are we going to do? We better go pour some concrete outside and get a pickup game going, which is really just what podcasts are.
Yeah. I mean, all I've ever wanted to do is be on radio. And now it's like, I go, okay, there's Sirius and there's YouTube. Those are the places you do radio. Like that's where you go to actually do something that's not like, because I mean, I guess there are people that might try to get a job in radio because they've romanticized it so much. But realistically, you're just sitting there pushing this automated playlist. It's not the thing that we romanticized.
No, I mean, as a matter of fact, Tom Petty, it's a really not known song. The Last DJ.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard this Tom Petty song?
Yes.
And I just feel like that song encapsulates how frustrating that must have been for a generation of DJs to just slowly have all of their creative freedom whittled away.
Yeah.
And zero, and nobody, and then zero outlet for them to go for, well over a decade. I mean, podcasts, there was about a 15-year lag from the destruction of terrestrial radio to the rise of Sirius. And then before we got to podcasts being solidified, man, there was a big gap of just crappy, clear channel talent.
Yeah.
Not even talent, just content.
Content. Yeah, content is the word. And when you look, I mean, I think there's so many stories. Like the first generation of people that actually were able to start making a living in podcasting were the people who did it for the first decade for free, that were just doing it going, I don't know what this is, but people are into it and I like doing it and they like when I do it. So I think I'm just going to keep doing it. And then it took years to figure out that, there is a way to make money doing this.
And that's the same story for not all, but many of the great wrestlers as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at someone like Kenny Omega. The dude was getting trained by Hugh Morris, getting bullied by that bowling ball of a man. And then, of course, has to go to New Japan. I mean, they have to travel. These wrestlers travel the freaking world for ring time because the market was obviously completely monopolized by Vince. So thank God for AEW. But I feel like I don't want to do like real artists, but people who have a passion for what they're doing will do it for free. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you have to have a bunch of side jobs. And that's why we're busting our ass. We're working hard now. But at least I don't have to go be a personal assistant on top of all of that.
Right.
It's so much harder in the beginning because you have to pay bills. This ain't doing it. And you have to perform at a high level because, that's your passion. So, I think if you really have a love for it, especially nowadays, you'll be able to figure out a way to get it done, whatever that might be, even if it's OnlyFans.
Yeah.
Whatever.
When did you guys realize, like, okay, like we all have, the three of us have fun doing this podcast together. We're going to have to now be business partners. Like, we've got to figure out how this becomes a thing where, because the three of you are running a business. You got Last Podcast on the Left. You have the podcast network. You have the stream. Yep. You have the book. You got
some weed coming, bro.
You do?
We got a weed line launching in 2 weeks.
I mean,
we're getting that all finalized. It'll be that sweet vape I have tested. Henry and I have tested every single vape.
Good.
They are strong. Definitely good. If you have dogs, those dogs will be cuddled harder than ever. So yeah, we've tried to diversify, and we do a lot of merch, and we realized as sort of time has gone on that it sounds a little bit corny, but kind of a lifestyle brand. In some ways we are a lifestyle brand coming in with more of a secular humanist perspective, bringing light into some of the darkest subject matter that's ever existed. And I'm not just talking about my political show. I'm talking about last podcast on the left. So for us, the one thing that really helped form us as a trio was we have always trusted each other. None of us have ever lied or whatever, never not lied to each other. I tell Henry he's not fat every day, but we trust each other. And I think that is the most important thing to have when going into business. Ups and downs are going to come. I mean, we've dealt with COVID. We've dealt with every social movement that's happened over these past 5, 6, a decade, but specifically over these past 5, 6 years since we've owned this damn thing. And it really comes down to trusting your partners and not having to worry about that aspect really allows you to, as Bill Burr says, Henry and I always think about the Bill Burr conversation he had on one of the late night shows, talking about white knuckling it, just driving through the storm and just stay focused on, we don't do any of the, I don't like to focus on any like picking fights or feuds or getting, any kind of heat that way with other podcasts or whatever. That's not our brand. Stay focused, stay on the road, and let the storm do as it will.
Yeah. And it's also like, if you're doing something at first because it's fun to do, you really shouldn't change that formula. You should make it so that it keeps being fun to do, right?
Yeah, you should just get paid to do it, and it should be more fun.
Yeah, because now there's money, and you just have fun. You don't have to do all the other stuff that's not fun. You just do the fun stuff, and you're able to live. It's great.
Yeah, and for us, we're trying to do that as much as possible. We have we have 4 researchers. Of course, Marcus still writes about a 15-page script for every single show. So we keep the man busy, but he's got bones for fingers. He loves to type. And that's what I tell myself anyway, so I don't feel guilty. So there is a boatload of work. But, man, again, we're so #blessed and #fortunate to be able to be in this position and to be able to not be suffering. And that's where our sympathies and empathy goes with so many people suffering right now. Like, podcasting has really given us everything. And the medium, the genre, talk radio, at the end of the day, I know today is the day that a portion of talk radio died with Rush Limbaugh, for better or for worse. But, talk radio is really the cornerstone of my entire existence.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you were kind of wrapping your head around this thing, because you guys have dipped into, obviously it's a true crime podcast, but the whole idea that the podcast is called The Last Podcast on the Left is clearly an homage to horror movies too. Yeah. And like, you do go into fictional stuff on the show. Where does your sort of passion lie? Like, do you love horror movies in the genre, or are you really a straight true crime guy?
Oh my goodness. Well, of course I came up with the name, not that it was that creative. It's based off of Last House on the Left.
Of course.
I'm sure everyone could figure that out.
The
wonderful Wes Craven film about basically a revenge. It was a woman, she was sexually assaulted, and her folks take revenge on the people who perpetrated it. And that's a classic horror trope. So horror movies and our love with horror movies, specifically Marcus Henry's and I's, obviously, that's what catapulted all of this. I remember one of the first times I hung out with Marcus, we watched Cannibal Holocaust, which is a movie that is so freaking badass. The director actually got called into court because they thought he truly killed the lead actress. And so the actress had to show up and be like, I am alive. They were like, all right, you didn't kill her. Like, that's how accurate the movie was. And they did kill a big turtle, which is kind of sad. But Marcus and I watched that movie and we were like, man, the fact that we laugh at the same parts of this like horribly disgusting dystopian film means that we need to be friends. So horror films are really what brought us together. And then from there, it just blossomed into the true crime phenomenon. And keep in mind, when we started this, there wasn't, the true crime boom hadn't really begun yet. We had like Nancy Grace and stuff like that, but Netflix was not spitting out a new docuseries every month. Like, it was a different genre, and the idea of doing comedy in concert with true crime information had never been done. So we sort of reinvented the wheel a little bit on that.
Yeah, I mean, when Netflix does something like when they put out like the Richard Ramirez thing that came out, last month, do you guys go like, okay, we got to revisit the Night Stalker story,
I feel like we did the Night Stalker justice.
Yeah.
It's whatever. The Night Stalker victims justice. That man can burn in frickin' hell, along with somebody who is also recently deceased, I suppose. That is, as far as we're concerned, the only issue that I see with the coverage of true crime has been making these people out to seem more powerful than they are. They're all a bunch of dimwits. They're a bunch of rejects. They're total and epic failures. They can't do anything appropriately. And quite honestly, being a serial killer is taking the easy way out. That's why I don't like the Ted Bundy tapes.
Mm-hmm.
They suck that man's dick more than a severed head could ever imagine. I mean, they love Ted Bundy in that documentary to the point where if he saw it, he would say, I got everything that I wanted.
I mean,
and I felt the same way with the Zac Efron movie, not to diss Zac. He did a great job. But my God, they made him look like a Romeo. And I'm like, this man had sex with decomposing corpses. He is disgusting. And there's nothing sexy, fun, or smart about him.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. It is no disrespect to Zac Efron. But if I told you, hey, man, I'm going to make a movie about your life. The first person, can Zac Efron play me? Like that, there's nobody who's not going to be psyched when they find out that Zac Efron is playing them in a movie.
Exactly. And one of the problems with that narrative, and this goes back to media, and this is why radio is so important, because media has been mishandling how we talk about serial killers for a long freaking time. Might be ironic coming from me, who does a Jackass style show about them, but just the way that they have built up the monster narrative. I mean, you look at somebody like a Jeffrey Dahmer. This man should have been caught a long freaking time ago.
Mm-hmm.
The cannibal stories. I'll go back slightly. I talked about how I loved SNL and Farley and stuff. I'm a Wisconsin boy. I grew up in Wisconsin. And so 94, I believe it was 94, we had SNL peak, Love and Comedy, and then boom, the Dahmer story hits. Every single newspaper, I had them, of course. I mean, people make fun of me for not reading well, but I read newspapers constantly. So it was like merged at some weird magic moment in my life where I was like, cannibalism, Jeffrey Dahmer, penises in freezers, what's going on? Combined with the Bears, and it's sort of like has melded to form whatever I am now.
Really, when you go like how does somebody, what raises somebody to give them the brain to come up with Last Podcast on the Left? And it's like, well, when you're raised around Chris Farley and Jeffrey Dahmer, yes, this is the love child.
That's it.
This is the love child of it.
And they both loved food, and isn't that nice? they both love to eat.
They love to eat,
and both of them, I guess that was their ultimate demise in some ways, wasn't it?
For both. I
mean, but to that point, actually, there are certain DNA strands that you see that you can almost relate to when covering, these serial killers. When you do start to humanize them, there is an aspect in every one of the series that we cover where you do have to empathize or have sympathy, or at the very least understand why they were created. Richard Ramirez, for example, I mean, his uncle basically raised him to be a serial killer. His uncle killing his wife in front of him when Richard was just a young kid. There was so many different destructive forces. Ted Bundy, on the other hand, from all accounts, his childhood was pretty normal. I think he was just born to have sex with dead people,
with corpses.
But so you look at some of the stories, and even Dahmer struggling with his sexuality, and you do empathize a little bit and sympathize. But then, of course, you realize the decisions that they made after those traumatic events That's where they get it all wrong. And I feel like that kind of coverage is really important.
Yeah, well, it is interesting that for some reason people are more comfortable covering them like they're monsters and sensationalizing it and making it into this thing that you can put on a t-shirt than actually figuring out the humanity of it. I don't know if it's because they don't want, like, we don't want to think, oh, you know, just a couple of sparks go wrong in my brain and this is the road you go down. Like, this is not a monster. This is the same species as you. And their brain just works a little bit differently.
Dude, if I'm a parent, I'm going to be so scared to be like, is the broccoli going to make him a killer? Like, freak out over everything. I'll be like, oh my God, we had to cancel the trip to Disney. Does this end it all? But of course, you can't be beholden to your children. You know, it really is something that I think was lacking for so long. And until you understand the human element, you're not going to understand why murder happens, why these sadistic thoughts manifest themselves in such real, brutal ways. So just from a psychological perspective and from a law enforcement perspective as well, you got to know where they come from, how they got here. Otherwise, they're just going to constantly pop up and you're going to be like, what? Oh my God, I can't believe this happened again. It's like, well, look at the freaking recipe, bro. And you're seeing it all over this country right now. I mean, we have these mass shooters going around, you know, not to tarp too much again on social media, but the new tech, it's warped people's minds. You know, you imagine people who grew up only immersed into this culture. I'm born in 1981. I remember the first Game Boy. I still played the Atari at the dentist's office. And I can't imagine not having that as a base of reality. If you're just birthed into this now, I mean, I could see easily getting lost in the cyberspace and allowing those narratives to really shape your entire worldview, which I think can be extremely negative.
Yeah. Do you remember as a kid when you'd be at the dentist's office and you'd be like waiting on the fluoride and they would give you, I mean, they'd either give you that one little like Tecmo Bowl, like one game handheld thing, or you'd literally, I remember as a kid, I would sit in the chair and I'd have the plastic thing that it was like the water tube with the fish inside, and you just had to keep pushing it until the rings got on
the water tube with the fish inside.
Yeah.
The stupid rings.
Terrible. It's impossible. It's impossible to win.
It was impossible. And yeah, of course, I did just shatter it on most sidewalks whenever I couldn't get it right. And you can't, the one thing with the PS4 or the PS5, you can't just shatter it. It's too expensive.
It is.
So these video games have found a way to protect themselves, and I don't like it.
It's smart. It's the machine's taking over, clearly.
It really is. Well, that's happening.
I also think that parents, I think it's going to take a couple of generations, because I think with like the social media warping, you have to have a parent that understands social media so that they can watch what their kids are doing and understand what effect it could have. And so it's like, now, I mean, kids that are coming up now, they don't know.
I think the next gens are actually going to be like, can you respect my privacy? I'm not going to do this because my dad did it, my mom did it. I feel like the more, like, whenever there's a word that I think is super douchey, I just say it, and I know for a fact that word's time is up. Like, if I'm like, oh, that slaps, Sam, that slaps is no longer a cool word to say. So I just say it so we can move on as a culture.
Right.
Just to acknowledge it got to me. I got it.
Right.
And now you guys have to come up with something different, because
it's over.
If I say it, it really doesn't slap.
It's finished. It's over. Did you like, I thought the Richard Ramirez miniseries was actually really great on Netflix. Like, because I'm the same way as you, like, especially now, like when I was a kid, I loved all the serial killer stuff. Like I didn't understand why it was bad. Like I remember going up to my mom, who my mom and dad lived in LA during the Manson killings. So they were, you know, it was a terrifying time. Yeah. And so I remember going up to her, and I was like a metal fan, and like, you know, just in Hit Parader magazine, it was just like a cutout thing where you could order a Charlie Manson t-shirt that says, "Remember kids, Charlie loves you." And I'm like, I was like, Marilyn Manson wears it? Rob Zombie wears it? Like, yeah, I need this shirt. And I was like, Mom, can you order this shirt for me? And she was like, no, I'm not going to order it. It's Charlie Manson. I'm like, yeah, I know. He's cool. She's like,
he's a great guy.
He's not, Mom. He's not cool.
Mom, he got all of his friends dune buggies. Have you gotten me a dune buggy, Mom?
Yeah.
Well, then maybe when you do, I'll get a t-shirt that says, I heart Mom. But until then, I need to know that Charlie loves me.
Yeah, Mom, you haven't made one hole for us to camp out in when the race war starts. Like, what are we even doing here?
But to that point, if you are a kid, Charles Manson, every one of his ideas is awesome. Take a bunch of acid, go hang out in the desert and ride dune buggies with a bunch of horny chicks.
Yeah.
I'll do it. So it does take a mother to say, no, that's ridiculous, completely unstable. And he's in prison.
Right. For a reason. But now it's like, I watch these things and I see the same thing that you did, the sensationalization and I'm like, as adults, I don't understand how we can watch this and not go, no, there's something up here. Like even when American Horror Story had the character playing Richard Ramirez and they got like the sexiest teen actor. And then like you look on Twitter and it was just Richard Ramirez stands. And it was like they were describing in the 80s when he got to wear his sunglasses in court and girls were sending him topless photos. I was like, why are you doing it again? Like it was bad that it happened that time. Why would you want it to happen again?
You know, when it comes to Ramirez, they got his ass new teeth. For the courtroom, they got him new teeth. So you look at his teeth, you're like, those are nice teeth. He had halitosis.
Yeah.
His teeth were as crooked as a Chicago politician. I mean, they were nasty and gnarled. His breath was horrible. The man is just so freaking disgusting. The only thing cool about him was his shoes. And so, yes,
they were rare.
I also don't know why, like, as I guess the defense or something brought him the new teeth. But my God, it definitely helped because when you can really see the gnarled inside of his mouth, you're like, oh, that person. That dude probably is a horrible scumbag.
It was amazing watching it, though, because the whole time, not only was it actually a miniseries about the investigation and about the actual crimes, not about this guy, but they called him, like, if you notice, up until they actually caught him in the docuseries, they just referred to him as the suspect almost the whole time. Which I was like, yeah, like, it's not only is it not turning him into this, like, he's the Night Stalker. It's actually like, I don't know, he's just some suspect, whatever.
And you know, bro, and that's on the media, right? Like, I do love that the media had a series of names and the Night Stalker is the one that stuck. Like every single editor at every single newspaper was like, what are we going to call this guy to move our papers? And you even heard it from the cop, which was just so weird, where the cop is like, we need another murder so we can figure out what the hell this guy is all about. And if from a media perspective, they needed another murder so they could continue to move, you know, whatever kind of crap that they were trying to sell. And I feel like that is one of the areas that we have tried to shift the paradigm and shift the way that people think when it comes to Last Podcast. And, you know, it goes back. So I graduated high school in 2000. And so naturally, I'm going to talk about 4/20/1999, not just Taylor's birthday. It's also Columbine. When Columbine happened, obviously that changed everything for us. And high school was totally different. Oh my God, I'm sorry. My dog is attacking the begging strips. Jerry, stop. Love you. Okay.
Are we still good?
Are we still good, Jerry?
We're still cool, right?
Come here, Jerry. Say hello to Sam. I got two dogs. They're little, so to live with the mystical storyline that I am indeed a giant from another land. I have two dogs that combined weigh 20 pounds.
What's the other dog's name?
I got Puffin and Jerry.
Now,
Puffin, come here.
Is Puffin jealous? Because like Jerry's obviously named because you're Ben and he's Jerry, so that's Ben and Jerry. But then when there's a third, it's like, well, there was only
Puffin's a South Korean dog. He was on the South Korean meat market. He was going to be a little barbecue, so I rescued his ass.
Wow.
And then Jerry was a buddy of mine. She was in New York, and she had to dip back to Australia because of all this COVID stuff. And he's just mine because it would be way too expensive to get him back to Australia. And so I have two dogs now.
It's fantastic. That's fantastic. Yeah.
But going back to Columbine.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, enough with this cuddly dog stuff. Let's go back to Columbine.
Yeah, let's talk Columbine. Although my boy Jerry's a straight up killer, so he's not allowed near any trench coats or guns.
Good.
But the media narrative immediately following Columbine was so nefarious and so wrong. And I think it set us back a generation when it comes to how we cover these things. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold were not bullied. They were the bullies. And the first narrative that came out was revenge on the jocks, revenge on all the people that criticized them for being goth. And in reality, they had a boatload of friends, to use the word boatload again, and they were known as the school assholes. And that narrative never really got through because the narrative was set immediately because mainstream media was so unbelievably irresponsible in their coverage, as they always are. And all of a sudden, we have sympathy for these people immediately, even though they are the monsters that killed so many innocent children and caused so much chaos, and really was the beginning of the prison state that is our high school and our public school system. Basically, if you want a pipeline to prison, look no further than public education, specifically in New York or LA. And because of the way that they talked about them, people glorified Eric, they glorified Dylan. There were fan clubs that popped up everywhere. And we're still dealing with that narrative to this day, where people think that they were out doing, taking revenge on the people who tormented them, when in reality, they were the tormentors. And everyone in that school was like, oh yeah, if someone was going to hurt us, it would be those two guys. They were really mean. And there's no ramifications for media whatsoever. They get to watch, they get the eyeballs on their network. They get to sell a bunch of crappy books and go on with their lives with no regard for how it just completely destroyed the entire narrative that should have been, where it's like, these kids were total bullies. And that's the stuff that we have to look out for. It demonized the wrong group of people.
Yeah. Yeah. It made it so, and it didn't stop anything.
Somehow Columbine happens and jocks were the assholes. I don't understand.
Yeah.
The whole thing was completely wrong. And not to mention the religious right. Then they took that story where supposedly they asked this woman if she was a Christian and she said yes, and then they shot her. Not a real story. The amount of people that monetized and capitalized off of Columbine, it makes my skin crawl, man. Nastiness.
Yeah, and you wanted to be like, look, I know you want to blame it on Marilyn Manson, but give it 20 years. Sure. He's going to do himself in, okay? Marilyn Manson's going to get himself in enough trouble. Don't you worry about that. Yeah. He's not responsible for this one.
I mean, the audacity that they even attempted to blame games like Doom. You couldn't even, Doom. The game sucked. I couldn't play any of those games. The GoldenEye, I was like, this is making me have a headache. I can only play the games now because the quality is so dang good. They blamed everything other than what should have been blamed, which is Eric and Dylan, the two psychos that did it.
So the premise really, I mean, when you break down last podcast, what you're doing is you're like, nobody is sitting here and making fun of these nerd, asshole, idiot serial killers.
Absolutely.
So let's trash them. Somebody's got to trash them.
We talk about how we enjoy to defang the monster. You know what I'm saying? Like, try to get these people, first you humanize them. Mm-hmm. So you get rid of the monster narrative. And then basically you just expose them for the impotent, petulant children that they are. One of the guys, as a matter of fact, I'm not sure if I can say his name legally, but he killed people on a hillside.
Gotcha.
And he strangled them. Okay, right. So that's a hint. But he heard our episode about him, and this is a true story. We found out through a lawyer that he wanted to sue us for defamation. The man strangled like 13 women.
Wow.
And he was going to be like, no, but they made fun of me. I was like, no, bro, sorry. Dude, you don't get to sue for defamation.
What?
You freaking asshole.
Yeah. And like, who's going to, like, what court is going to be like, I don't know. I mean, he did a lot of stuff, but that wasn't true.
That was rude. That was rude. And it's because we feminized him a little bit. And that's the other thing. All of these people, they just hold, and again, the media narrative, they hold on to that media narrative as part of their story arc as well.
Yeah.
It feeds into that. It gives them that celebrity status. So when we come along and just call them what they are,
mm-hmm.
bunch of impish losers, it cuts to the core. And I think that's That's great. And obviously, again, we don't make fun of the victims whatsoever, or the, and we
or
just
the
try
crime
to be
itself.
Yeah. Just make fun of these freaking maniacs.
But dude, I mean, like, I have a hard enough time thinking that, like, if I talk about somebody on the radio, they might hear it. Like, for me, like, I remember I tripped out when I was like, I talked about my parents on the radio, and then they were like, hey, I heard that. And I was like, you heard that? How could you have heard that? The idea that I mean, that's got to be such a crazy thing that the podcast could get to the point where you're talking about serial killers and the serial killers would actually hear the show. It's insane.
Well, and believe it or not, serial killers are very self-centered. So anything that's about them, they will find out.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I find out that Dennis Rader really hates us and he has to squeeze his underwear around his nutsack just a little bit tighter in that jail cell to make himself come, that'll make me happy. As long as if I can aggravate Dennis Rader, BTK, one of the most annoying sons of bitches of all time, I've done my job.
You guys,
freaking horrible poet.
You guys didn't put BTK up on a pedestal?
Definitely not. Find, torture, kill. You know how he got caught, right?
I don't remember.
He straight up emailed the police of Wichita, was like, hey, if I send you guys a floppy disk, you can't trace it, right? And they were like, nah, bro, of course not. Send it our way. And believe it or not, they traced it to the church where he worked, because of course he hid behind the pulpit like so many of these psychopaths. And then he got busted. And the only reason he got busted was he came out of retirement after 20 years because he was so desperate for attention because he couldn't get it doing anything else in life.
I just love that. No, definitely can't trace it. No, certainly not.
Talk about a boomer mistake.
Yeah,
he's like one of those guys who goes on Instagram and just shows all the money they just stole from the bank.
The trippy thing about that for me, and they made there was a movie about it, the something killer or something. I don't remember the. I'll think of the name as we're talking, or maybe you've seen it. It came out digitally like maybe 2 years ago. Okay. But the idea that guy had a family, like Dennis Rader had a family and a daughter, more specifically, like a kid who had no idea, like this is just dad. And it's like,
and he killed children. I believe, I don't want to get the name wrong. I believe it's the Ortega family was the first family that he killed. But a child was around the age of his children that he murdered and raped. And yeah, I mean, it's just unbelievable. And strangely enough, his daughter is one of the most difficult people to ever get. If you want to interview her, you have got to fill out about 10 pages of paperwork. And she still is very strange. She wrote a whole op-ed about how her father BTK is going to heaven and how he's like a good man and all this stuff. I'm like, I don't know if I want to talk to this chick. Like, I don't think the apple fell too far from the tree.
Wow.
She seems a little, I mean, the amount of sociopathy that man had, I would assume some of it translated over into his family as well.
Yeah, I mean, you have to believe that if you can trace it back, like we were talking about with like Richard Ramirez being trained, if there were psychos that came before him and sociopaths that came before him, odds are that that's going to be in the blood. Like that's going to come after, right?
Yeah, man. And of course, Ramirez was really almost a proxy. As the Vietnam War was a proxy war, his uncle was almost the proxy extension of the Vietnam War into his mind as a kid. So that kind of let that trauma go on for a whole nother generation. Because you can imagine after Vietnam, there were a lot of very sick people because of, how we treated them.
Yeah. I would imagine that would be the case. I'm just laughing at the idea of different serial killers, like finding out that they were just being mocked on a widely listened to podcast and how really upset they would be about that.
Well, first you have to explain what a podcast is. And then you just have to I would have to explain it like I do for every single pitch meeting that we have, where it's like, well, thankfully we don't have to do that now, but it'd be like, it's like radio, but it's on the internet. And then they say, is it radio? No, it's a podcast, but it's like radio. And then we do that for an hour and we walk out and we don't sell a show.
I love the book. I was really excited. I didn't even know about it really, but like I saw it in a bookstore and I was like shopping for my wife for Christmas. And I was like, you know what? And I had to hide it because I didn't want her to know I had been to a bookstore, but literally on Christmas, Like I gave her stuff, and then she was like, "What's that?" And I'm like, "No, that's another book. That's not for you. That's for me. That's for my own reading."
Well, Marcus, obviously Henry and I did some jokes in there, and I wrote the sort of at the end of each chapter, just a little joke pages there, along with my friend Brooke Rogers, who helped me. But Marcus really busted his ass, man, and he did a great job writing that. And I know it's a thankless process to write a book, dude.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, last year, of course, not that we're the biggest victims by any stretch of the imagination, but we were supposed to go on our book tour, and obviously all of that was canceled. But we're going to get out there later on this year, and I can't wait for Marcus to be able to see all the people praising his work.
Yeah,
he
good.
did a bang up job.
And it really is like, it's dense. It's like there's a lot of it's not dense in the sense like there's jokes obviously throughout, but I mean dense in the sense
It's
content
brutal.
filled. Yeah. It's like a lot of information that's in there. And it's not one of those like, I was going to say, it's not one of those books where like you just transcribe some episodes of the podcast and put a cover on it and be like, here's the book. I'm like, this is the book in and of itself would have been enough to be like, no, this is the work that I do, this book. Oh yeah. And there's also this whole other empire over here.
Yeah, I mean it's a blessing and a curse. We want to have good content,
Right?
Because it's easier than ever to crap stuff out, and in many ways that stuff is also like greatly monetized. You can make a lot of money on trash, which is what I've been trying to suggest for a long time. The book that I wanted to do was the fronts and butts of serial killers, where we take a picture of their front and we take a picture of their butt, and then we make fun of it. But apparently that was too lowbrow for Marcus.
Well, come on.
I mean, I want to see what Ed Kemper's package and his butt. The book writes itself.
That's true. I mean, I've seen X-rays of Albert Fish's pelvis to see all the needles and stuff that he shoved up inside him.
God.
But I'd love to. I mean, if you could get a picture of his butt and then compare it with his front, I feel like I would pick up that book.
Oh my God! Early 19th century. Or 20th century old man butt.
Yeah.
Oh, yikes. That's going to be a special level right there. No wonder. I mean, there was nothing comfortable to sit on. So really having a bunch of nails shoved up your ass probably isn't that much more uncomfortable than a subway seat.
That's true. I would have loved to have talked to the person that did the X-ray though. Because Albert Fish was just like,
oh my God,
terrible serial killer, child cannibal, like just the most deranged person you could ever read about. But like,
so Mr. Fish, thank you so much for coming in. You said you had an X-ray that okay. I just have to ask, have you been getting up to anything at all? Human whoopee cushion? Okay. Interesting. Human thumbtack? That's great.
I mean, it's dozens and dozens of
insane.
Sewing needles that he just shoved basically into his taint, and he just put them up there. That's what he liked to do with his free time. And like when they finally,
man, it's better than playing that stupid freaking game in the water with the rings.
That's true.
Still rather shove needles up my perineum.
Then they finally X-ray him, and they're like, "Bro, there's like hundreds of these things in you." And he's like, "Well, I mean, what am I? You don't shit them out after you put them up there. Like, I don't. Where'd you think they were gonna go?"
He looks at them like they're dumb. He's like, "Yeah, no kid, you got to get them out of there somehow."
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, right? That's why I'm here. If it was two, they would just be there, right?
Oh, the life of a doctor. You get to see so many things inserted into the human anus.
It's funny that you brought up Cannibal Holocaust because that was just on Shudder on the streaming service not that long ago, and they had to play like it was on like Billy Bob's. No, not Billy Bob. What's his name?
Bob. Oh my.
Joe Bob Briggs. Joe Bob Briggs.
We got drive-ins. We got Billy Bob Briggs, baby.
Yeah. It was on his show, and but they had to put a thing at the top of the movie. Still in 2021, going like this is gonna be disturbing. Also, some animals died. Don't try to cancel us. This is just, it's a thing that happened, and we're gonna show it to you right now. And like every time the movie took a break, so Briggs could pop on, he was like, "Hey man, this is what it is. This is the world that we're living in. What am I gonna tell you,
dude? I have to take my hat off and tip my hat to Tipper Gore. Early 90s, parental advisory warnings. The disclaimers. If it didn't have a disclaimer, I'm not watching it.
Yeah.
I love when you got the feeling of, forbidden knowledge. Like I used to go to this place, Hollywood Video, for your audience, there used to be a place called video stores. You would go and you would rent them, and you had to go buy porn in public, so everyone knew that you were into piss. I used to watch not nothing, but I watched a lot of Japanese death matches.
Oh, dude.
Pro wrestling Japanese death matches.
Dude.
And I'll never forget walking into Hollywood Video. I had my boy there who was like probably 5 years older than me, but he was big into it as well. I think he was on the spectrum, but he was very friendly to me, which was nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, do you have any more Japanese death matches? And in order to get them, you had to go past the porno section. So I was like the only 13-year-old who was like, tits, pussy, whatever. I was like, let me see the people dipped in the piranha bath, please.
You're speaking my language.
I'll never forget that feeling of like going to the adult section to get the secret, cassette tape that was full of all the things that were wrong. And there's something about that feeling you can't
it's the
you
best.
Can't explain it. So thank you for parental advisories and thank you for disclaimers, because I know I'm in the right spot.
I was a wrestling tape trader all throughout high school. I mean, I still have at my parents' house. There's a closet full of hundreds of VHS tapes. They're still all there. But
awesome.
Like, people have no respect for me because they're like, oh, do you have like, all Japan stuff and like the Dynamite Kid and all like the really good wrestling? And I'm like, no, man, no, I have so much deathmatch stuff. Like, it's all garbage wrestling, Japanese death matches, FMW, Big Japan, IWA King of the Death Match. Like, it's all, I loved it so much. I don't know what that says. Like, literally, when I was in high school, I was probably a junior or something like that. And I was in just art class. And he said, okay, we're going to take all semester and we're going to theme your project around one thing. And we're going to do a collage and we're going to do an acrylic painting and we're going to do a sculpture, but it's all going to be around the same theme. And I was like, obviously Cactus Jack. Obviously. And I literally had to I snuck barbed wire. Like, I went all around town trying to figure out where you could just buy barbed wire.
Yeah.
And then I snuck barbed wire into school because I wanted to make a deathmatch collage. But it was supposed to be
that's like the most innocent reason ever to get barbed wire.
Yeah. It was like a mixed media collage. And so I was like, well, I definitely need like some chain. I need to like tear up canvas and put it on. Print out pictures.
Tear off a piece of your ear and like Van Gogh it on there.
Yeah. And then I took like rubber cement and I rubber cemented, so I gimmicked it. I rubber cemented all the barbed wire spikes. And then I actually like glued it on to the mixed media thing. And I do think that at one point the teacher was like, did you bring that barbed wire into school? And I was like, oh no, I don't know. That was just here. I don't know. I
found it at the barbed wire room.
Yeah.
I don't know about our big barb. Yeah, it's straight out like, the final scene in Suspiria? It's like that.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah, but I was into it.
It's so funny. I definitely know I've matured, because I used to watch, going like the Piranha match, for example, just to stick with that one. So long story short, the guy gets dropped into a bath of piranha, as you can imagine, and they pull him out right away, but they still got fish on him and shit. And as a kid, I was like, oh, they should have left him in there a little longer. And as an adult, I'm like, what are you doing in there? Get out of there.
Yeah, because you're sitting there, right? And I remember Big Japan did it, and they literally, like, that's the way, they had a giant pool of piranhas. It was like a tub of piranhas outside the ring. And the only way to win the match is to throw your opponent out of the ring and into a tub full of piranhas. And of course, they get him out really quickly to make it safe.
Right away.
But you can see the way they're biting him. It's like, you really put piranhas in there? Why would you use... It's wrestling. Don't use real piranhas.
Dude, he could have died. I don't remember any of the wrestlers other than Funk and Mick and a few of the Japanese guys.
Onita and Mr. Pogo and Mike Awesome. Pogo. I mean, so many great ones. So many just.
But that's why, wrestling. Oh, anyways, to combine all things, wrestling, comedy, violence, serial killers. That's why good pro wrestling combines all of those things.
Yep.
And then the athleticism. That's why I just have so much respect for it, man. I have so much freaking respect for those dudes, because I took one bump in a ring above Skip's Bowling Alley in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. And I realized right then it wasn't going to happen for me. It hurt so damn bad. As soon as they hit the ropes, as an ignorant 16-year-old, I was like, those are ropes. And they're like, yeah, they call them ropes. I was like, I don't think they were going to be just ropes, though. But they're just ropes, if you're lucky.
Yeah. That's if you're lucky. If you're not lucky, they're elevator cables. Literally
that's
elevator
what
cables.
Mick's ear off.
Yeah, they were just like, let's make the elevator cables extremely tight. People are like, oh, how did Mick Foley get his ear ripped off? Imagine if you had extremely taut elevator cables and then your head was wrapped in them and somebody was just pulling as hard as they could and you thought your head was going to explode between the elevator cables. That was Mick Foley's existence. Oh, and also you're in Germany and nobody speaks English.
And you maybe got $1,500 if you're lucky, and you have to wrestle tomorrow night.
Yeah.
No, man, I got so much respect for them. It's absolutely insane.
I got pretty excited when I saw your Instagram recently because I think you and I, probably because we're around the same age, we have a soft spot for the same stuff. And I saw that you were actually at home watching Superstars from 1993 on the WWE Network. And it's literally, when I found out there were new episodes of WWF Superstars from 1993 going into 1994 on the network, I immediately was like, yep, and turned it on. Man,
They were so good.
Yeah.
A young Vince, not young, I guess mid-50s Vince, but, I forgot or didn't forget, but I missed how fun it was when they would dress up. Vince, that guy put his entire essence into it. And I don't think there was a greater announcer ever than Vince McMahon.
Because he knew how he wanted that product presented. I don't think Vince McMahon as an announcer would have worked anywhere else. But for what the WWE was, he knew exactly how he wanted the product presented. We weren't supposed to know the names of every single move, and it was just supposed to be a feeling. It was supposed to be just excitement. Like, that was a great maneuver. Yeah.
And then I've been, obviously, because I have the network, I'm rewatching all of the Attitude Era, all of those pay-per-views, and Jerry Lawler and JR, again, just as far as radio personalities, because I'm just officially a child again, so I just fall asleep with it now in my room. I just have it on my TV and fall asleep. Those guys are it's a podcast in itself. I don't even need to see the wrestling. They are so good at their job. And, we were really lucky, man. We had a lot of people penetrating our brain at a young age that I think were super talented.
Yeah.
That probably brought us to where we are now.
I mean, if you go back even earlier than 93 and you look at like Primetime Wrestling, which is Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan just sitting at a desk and like doing the ins and outs for the matches. I mean, those two are literally as good as any comedic duo has ever been.
And not respected enough.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Bobby the Brain Heenan. Now, I will always go with Lawler over Heenan.
Wow.
I think that Lawler was funnier. I think he was wittier. And he was a better wrestler as well, because, Bobby was mostly the manager there. He got in the ring a few times in sort of lark matches. But watching WCW, he and Shivani working with Mike Tenay. If you haven't watched those, as the audience, check out that as well, especially if you want to get into commentating or announcing or radio. Man, those guys had some fun barbs going back and forth. Really entertaining stuff. Even in a boring ass match with Glacier.
Yeah. I mean, there's that moment when Hulk Hogan turned on WCW and joined the NWO. There's one moment where Bobby Heenan goes, "I just knew it," and you go, this is the story, because like Bobby Heenan has been trashing Hogan since the 80s, and you're like, oh my God, this is the whole long form story finally coming full circle. This is amazing.
I think Hogan was what Bret Hart was to Heenan, what Lawler was to Brain. What I'm saying is Lawler hated Bret Hart and Heenan hated Hogan, and they never let go of the bit.
No.
To the point where I think they hated each other.
Yeah. To the point where like you're like, You know Lawler's not getting back in the ring. You know Bret Hart has moved on from this entirely. Why does he still hate the Hart family so much? He's still making fun of Stu and Helen. It doesn't seem right.
But that is perfect wrestling. When the kayfabe is so melded, when fake and reality are so perfectly melded into premium kayfabe content, which is what AEW I think is doing a bang up job on right now as well. That's wrestling gold, man.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the Young Rock sitcom.
I haven't seen it yet, but I saw the preview, and dude, that man, he's amazing.
Yeah, it's super fun. It's like, I mean, it's network TV, right? So for a wrestling geek, it's a little on the nose at points, but you have to understand that they're like trying to entertain people that have never watched wrestling before, and just to sit there, right, and see on whatever night of the week it's on, I guess Tuesday night, prime time, NBC, we're watching a sitcom. Soul Man Rocky Johnson, the Iron Sheik, the Wild Samoans, Andre the Giant, and you're like, God bless you, Rock. God bless you.
Well, The Rock, he really is, he is this era. He is this era's Hulk Hogan, but he's just better. I mean, I think I love him so much, and what he's done for wrestling is so incredible. And he has stayed with his roots also. Like, it's so easy once you get successful, and a lot of comedians do this, especially with, because we do our shows. I do some shows on Fox News every now and again, especially like Red Eye, where we met. And sometimes people get big in Hollywood and they decide to turn their backs on some network that might be controversial, whatever. And The Rock, for him to stay true to the wrestling business the way that he has really been awesome, because it would have been so easy for him to be like, that was then, this is now, that was all fake and bullshit. And he maintains kayfabe, but he also like really shows respect for the biz. And obviously that's because he has maybe the greatest family in wrestling history other than the Harts.
Yeah, and that's right. That's a debate. The Anawatys or the Harts. That's a big debate. But yeah, I mean, just the idea that he embraces calling himself The Rock. Like, he's not like, I'm Dwayne. The Rock was somebody I portrayed The Rock on a television show. Like, he's like, no, cool, man. You guys love The Rock. I am The Rock. Like let's rock. Let's do this. Let's do this. And it is interesting. I was thinking about that. Like, I kind of wondered as last podcast got so big, if you were just going to stop talking about anything politically, because
it's ingrained in my DNA.
Ironically, it is easier to talk about serial killers than it is to talk about politics and survive. Like, it's easier to do, but no, dude, you do the political podcast, you still pop up. Yeah. Although I will say this, when I met you, you were a clean-shaven, close-cropped, polite young man who looked a little bit more like he could hang on a news channel. Whereas now I feel like you have fully embraced the fact that you are independent, and that means you are independent of haircuts and shaving and anything.
Hey, well, this is also a COVID look. I went into the barber shop 3 weeks ago because I did dry January, 2 weeks ago, and I was like, I'm gonna celebrate, get it all done, like the homeless makeover, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I walk in and the guy's like, we don't cut long hair and we can't cut beards. So I just walked out again and I was like, well, you know what? The sign says I'm supposed to keep this long ass look for a while until these maniacs allow me to cut it.
Yeah, I'll pay you for 2 haircuts, whatever you need.
Whatever, I don't care. I was like, what do you cut, bush hair? What are you doing? Why are you open? What am I doing here?
Yeah, this is all you do. There should not be a limit on how long the hair can be. If you only cut short hair, you shouldn't be in business. There's no reason to cut short hair.
It's like going into a gas station and be like, we only fill up full tanks here. It doesn't need to be filled up. It's short hair.
How could you?
And I think what happened was I walked into, unbeknownst to me, like an alt-right barber shop or something. The guy seemed very Proud Boy. So I was like, maybe I don't need the newest Nazi look this week.
Yeah, you're like, sir, I don't see this being a sustainable business, but that's none of my business.
Whatever. There's a lot of fascists out there. Maybe fascist barbers.
Fascist barbers. Yeah. Who knows? They got to get their haircut too.
They do.
They
do.
So with horror movies, do you like to go deep? Like, do you like I had I guess it goes beyond horror movies because it's more like action movies. but I had Frank Stallone on the show, and it was only because I wanted to talk to him about the B movies that he's been in.
Did you have an opportunity to talk to Frank Stallone about his mother?
I didn't. We only talked about the B movies. We did not talk about his
I'm mad
mom.
at you.
Well, maybe I'll get him back on.
I'm also mad. I was watching Corolla. Corolla also had Frank Stallone on, and neither of you. His mom reads buttholes. She tells the future through human buttholes.
All right.
That's his mom's entire life. Next time you have Frank on, please call me, and I'm gonna be like, Frank, tell me about how your mom reads buttholes. She is a horoscope. She does horoscopes via the anus. This is what his mom does. This is Frank Stallone, iconic B actor, does blame Sylvester. The one thing about Frank is,
go ahead.
He says Sylvester Stallone's Rocky came out the same weekend as his album, and he does blame that for the album not doing very well.
I mean,
I'm not sure if that's true.
It should have theoretically been the reverse, no? Like, wouldn't it have actually helped the album? Like,
no, it should have helped. The album wasn't very good.
I think that might be right. I think your theory may hold water. I think I'm starting to back your theory.
but Frank Stallone, yeah. So Mama Stallone, it's this whole thing. She has a whole website. Oh my God, I'll actually pull it up. And so that's how he was raised. So good for Frank Stallone.
Reading buttholes, yeah. Yeah, okay. So the first conversation was, I only want to talk about B movies. And the second conversation is going to be, I only want to talk about your mom reading buttholes. We'll plug whatever you want to plug, but please, I need some time to talk about butthole horoscopes.
Absolutely. Apparently the butthole show. Well, oh my goodness. I definitely did a wrong search because I am finding a lot of butthole footage.
You know, this could have gone back to your original serial killer book. We could have done the book, put all of the butts of serial killers in there, sent the book to Frank Stallone's mom, and she could have done the horoscopes for the serial killers.
Okay, so her name is Jackie Stallone. It's called a Rumpology.
Rumpology.
Yeah, bro. So all you got to do, meet her.
Write that down.
Send it on over, and she'll tell you everything you need to know.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Hey, did you see the Cecil Hotel docuseries or
I didn't see it yet. Okay. The only thing I know is that apparently they accused somebody of the murder that probably didn't do it. You got to be careful. That's the only thing because this is about the Elisa Lam thing, right?
Yes.
Jerry, stop.
Yes, it is.
But I didn't see it yet. I would love to go check out the Cecil Hotel, though. That place seems freaking nasty.
Yeah, do you like death tours and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's why 2 years ago, we were in New Orleans, and there's nothing more fun than getting stoned and just walking around New Orleans with a guide being like, a vampire masturbated on that corner. I love that stuff. We had a chance to go to Europe, and obviously Europe is nothing but a haunted ghost land.
Yeah.
And I was going to do some tours with my boys in Edinburgh, but it's all underneath the city, and I couldn't frickin' fit. So instead I had to go to a strip club, which was a different kind of a lesson. But Jerry, get over here. I'm on a conversation with a very successful man.
Well, look, you're a very successful man yourself, and I'll let. I don't want to take you from Jerry. I'll let Jerry have your time.
He doesn't even want my time. He rejects me as soon as I get close to him. He runs away.
That's great. By the way, I love the Undertaker retro T-shirt. That's awesome, and I can already tell that it's legitimately a retro shirt, not like
the WWF prop around the back.
Right, not like a redo. So I love that.
I've held on to I had so many shirts in high school, man, and I was only able to hold on to one. I had my One Mankind shirt.
Go for it. Bless you.
I had my One Mankind shirt, and I think I officially lost it in my latest move from New York to LA, and I had it with me forever.
Well, that's what you get for moving to LA, I guess.
I know. I get punished.
Well, I mean, look, I'd promote Last Podcast on the Left, but at this point, I feel like all the people are listening. However, if you're not for any reason, listen to it. The Last Book on the Left is out now. The Last Podcast Network is the network where you can listen to all of the great content that Ben delivers on a regular basis. And yeah,
Yeah, man. Well, thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you.
And I would love to have you on any show. If you would like to come on the LPN show or the wrestling show, or if you want to talk politics, I'd love to have you on there too. If you want to sink your whole career, we can do that.
yeah. I mean, I'm probably too stupid to talk politics. I always felt like
I think you might be too smart.
Maybe. I always felt like when I was on Red Eye, like it was always fun when it was with another comedian or something, because like I would just come up with jokes and just make jokes about it. I'd never make a point. I don't think I've ever made a point. I was on that show a bunch and I never made a point. I'd just like be like, oh, you'll let me on TV and you just let me tell some jokes. Like, oh, I'll do that. But then like somebody would be sitting next to me every now and then and they'd be like, well, I think this is evidence of this happening. And I'd be like, huh? What? It's 3 o'clock in the morning. What are we doing here?
It's 3 a.m. Can we not do this right now?
But yeah, I'll go on any of your shows anytime, man.
Well, man, I just am so happy to see all your great success, and you do such a wonderful job hosting. You did a great job hosting Vengeance, your most recent hosting venture for the WWE. You're a total beast, and every time I see you, I scream at the TV and I say, "Look at him, Sam! Keep on crushing it, bro."
I appreciate it, man.
You're a wonderful man, and this has been a great experience for me. Thank you.
It's been a blast. Thank you, dude.